part of the human condition is to undergo great contrast, to understand lack and fullness.
We're talking about wealth, but we're still codependent on money. How are we going to solve that?
To at times feel empty and other times feel satiated.
We embrace the cycles of nature much more easily than we embrace the cycles of money.
Money is one of those beings that is here to teach us a lot.
How we can experience wealth differently.
And it can often have us swing between these pendulums for the purposes of not only discovering ourselves, but learning how to be in partnership.
Net worth has started to get confused with self-worth.
Today's show is about having a conversation that is not just one for personhood or identity, a conversation for the soul. What does money have to say to you?
We've been pushing away scarcity by trying to grasp for abundance.
And what have you never said to money?
Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is SIMRAN. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself. Broaden your mind. Open your heart. Here's your host, SIMRAN.
Money is this interesting conversation. We all want it, and sometimes it stays away, and other times it comes right to us. And then there's this fear of losing it. There's so many things that can happen around money, and it ends up landing in different parts of us. Sometimes it's a physical, visceral experience, whether we have it or whether we don't. And other times it can become totally emotional. If there's not enough, it sends us into a tailspin of emotions. If it's overflowing and there's so much, we can be on a high. And that's multi-layered because that comes from our stories, it comes from our upbringing, all kinds of places, and the things that we've been exposed to. What if the real conversation has to do with true wealth, and that money's only a tiny piece of that? Elizabeth shares that our mind has dominated economics and finances for too long, at the expense of the wisdom and richness of our heart. She shares that money is one of our greatest assets and teachers. Like all true mentors, it is brutally honest. And through her book, The Power of Enough, she goes on to demonstrate how money exposes our vulnerabilities, like when there's too much or when there's not enough. How it challenges us to keep our promises, like when we say, "I'll save more next month," and then demands our accountability. Elizabeth Husserl is a registered investment advisor, representative, financial advisor, and co-founder of Peak360 Wealth Management, a boutique wealth planning firm, and her new book, The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money. Welcome, Elizabeth.
SIMRAN, thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to hear all of that reflected back, and I can't wait for us to dive in.
Embodying wealth really does mean that we have to feel at home with ourselves and who we are, but that's not necessarily what we're taught and what we're shown. When we go into fight or flight, we really forget all about well-being, wealth, satisfaction, fulfillment, because then we're just in this state of hunger. The place that I want to start this conversation is actually about eggs. Because the conversation about the price of eggs is everywhere in the media, and it is sending people into this frenzy that is actually having us sink into our shadows around money, our fears, our ideas of what this world is coming to and what that means for us. And that's opposite of this power of enough feeling that you write about. What you think about the price of eggs and what that means in the bigger context of this conversation.
Yes, I mean, thank you so much. What a unique entry point. But I want to start with the premise. You spoke to it in the introduction. The real question that I'm addressing and speaking to is, why is it that we have so much and yet we feel so poor? And I know that some people would argue, well, I don't feel like I have that much money, or it ebbs and flows, to your point. Like, we do go through economic cycles together. There are moments of recession, depression, growth. But in general, we actually have a lot more access to resources than we sometimes let ourselves see, because I define resources so much more broadly than just money. What happens is that we end up conflating and combining and thinking that money and wealth are the same thing. And a big piece of what I'm speaking about in the book is really separating what money is and what wealth is. And we can separate money, get to understand it, the relationship that we have with it, the ways that we make it, earn it, spend it, all the things that money does. But to see that it's different than wealth, which is the state of well-being. It's an experience. It's something that we feel in our body. But let me come back to your question around, what do I think about the increase of price of eggs? So the first thing that came up when you were asking that question, Simran, was, oh my goodness, the gratitude that I feel towards eggs, because I use them every day in my life. Every morning I have 2 poached eggs. The increase in price has actually changed my awareness of, like, oh my goodness, my breakfast just got more expensive, right? Sometimes I go to the grocery store and I can't find cartons of eggs. Now it's limited in how many I can buy. And so I know the conversation that my husband and I have been having recently is, one, we get up earlier to go to the grocery store. And 2, do we really need to eat as many eggs as we were having, or what do we need to adjust because of the price in our grocery bill? But notice, those are conversations that can be had in a more neutral way, knowing that I'm adjusting to the existence of resources in my world. In the past, our ancestors lived more cyclical and seasonal. Think of like vegetables, they go through seasons, and fruits go through seasons. And when blueberry season is over, yes, I get sad, but if I lived in a world that didn't always have the source of blueberries, I would know they would come back. So the same thing with eggs. If I'm going through a season where eggs are really expensive, I have lots of choices. I can feel a lot of emotions. For some people, it's anger. For some people, it's fear, definitely scarcity. And I can let that emotion rule my experience of wealth, or I can let that emotion move through me and cycle through me. And I talk about the 90-second emotion rule in the book. This too shall pass, right? If anyone has raised a toddler, we know that we go through spike emotion moments, but they do pass through our body. And then I have the second choice of readjusting and redesigning. And that's when we really start to feel agency in our relationship to wealth. We have the ability to redesign and be nimble as things change in our world when it comes to resources, one of them being money. And there's so many resources that we can access. But that's the key piece here, is that I've had to adjust my own patterns and behaviors when it comes to eggs. I've chosen to have those conversations with my family. So if I only bring back 1 carton, it's not because I didn't read the list correctly, it's because that's what I was limited to in the grocery store. And as a family, we're talking about, how do we use this resource more consciously? Because guess what? Right now, it is in less supply. So notice how I can use that terminology more neutral. I can take responsibility for my emotions around it, and I can take responsibility for redefining my experience of wealth, knowing that everything is cyclical. And that's really important. We embrace the cycles of nature much more easily than we embrace the cycles of money.
I'm very much about signs, symbols, and synchronicities. That's what a lot of my writing and my work has been about. And the egg is symbolic of the cosmic egg, that new cosmic level of consciousness. You're asking individuals to look at their world in a different way. This egg is just a symbol of how we can now up-level and birth a new world within ourselves and our experience based on this holistic way that is responsible, but then also organic. You say money is the ultimate scapegoat in the world. I'd love for you to share the distinction between money and wealth.
I love that you're making reference on the cover of the book, that symbol that I have. For some people have come back and said, is that an egg? For me, it's the well of worthiness. And I do think that there is kind of like cosmic wisdom. What gives life? Like an egg gives life. The well of worthiness gives life. And that is the journey that I'm taking people on, is to tap into that by getting super clear about what pertains to the world of money, what does not, how we can experience wealth differently. Money is something that has 4 functions in our society. We use it as a currency of exchange. We use it to store value. We use it for credit. All of the functions of money allow us to exchange the things that we consume, produce, make, our goods and services. And funny enough, it allows us to be in more flexible, fluid relationships with each other outside of the world of barter, right? A lot of people have this notion that a lot of our older communities, ancestors used to barter a lot. They would use currency. It didn't have to be currency as we know currency, like our US dollar. They'd use different things for currency or different minerals, but they used it as an exchange. And what it did not do back then in our kind of smaller ancestral worlds, it didn't replace trust because we knew each other. We had very intimate relationships with each other. In our modern culture, money not only has these functions of exchange, it's been used as a social technology to communicate trust. And what I mean by that is that if I arrive in a city and I'm totally new and I want to go buy my groceries, they won't give me an IOU. Here's your basket of groceries. I trust that you're going to come back and pay because they don't know me. So money starts to replace our experience of trusting, right? We have a credit score that speaks to our credit worthiness. And notice I'm using those words intentionally, SIMRAN, because we've started to kind of use money to connect to our sense of worth. And that's where it gets so confusing and icky, and people kind of want to shrug it off like, if I don't have more money, then I'm not valued. Net worth has started to get confused with self-worth. And so this is really important just to bring the redefining of terms and the awareness of terms to the table, because that's how we start to kind of wake up from this stupor that we've been in as a modern culture. I work in this industry all day long. I'm listening to the terms we use. We call investments securities. And I'm like, oh, does anyone else hear that? Why is money our ultimate security? You ask any psychologist, and true security comes from your ability to feel attached to yourself, to the world around you. Secure attachment is what brings us real security. But we have replaced money for that. If we start to get super clear, what are the functions of money? And it can get used as a social technology, but it shouldn't define me. It cannot truly speak to how trustworthy or my sense of worth is. That leads the question of what then does, right? And it's the experience of wealth. And what I tell people is that before we talk about the experience of wealth, we got to clear up the interference that people have with their relationship to money, because this speaks to the scapegoat piece.
Talk about what you mean by it being the scapegoat for us.
Right? Because money has replace the sense of trust and intimacy in relationships and credibility, we're angry at it, right? We feel abandoned by money. We feel like it doesn't show up enough in the world. We feel scared and we want to hold on tight to what we've been doing. SIMRAN, is that we've been pushing away scarcity by trying to grasp for abundance. And I speak about this in the book, the abundance scarcity loop that we're stuck in. And if you do that in your body, right, imagine taking one hand and pushing something away and taking the other hand and trying to grasp really hard. I'm doing that right now in my body and I'm feeling a lot of tension. That is not a relaxed way to be in the world. And so a lot of what I do in the first part of the book is let's address your relationship to money. Let go of both of those stances in your hand, relax your body, and let's dive in deep and be like, what is at the core of your relationship to money? And I introduce a lot of tools. My favorite one is sit down and have a conversation with money. Once you start to see what is at the core of your relationship to money, we start to clear up the interference. And what happens, SIMRAN, is that a lot of times I see clients or people go like, oh, that's what I'm angry about. Or, oh, that's what I'm trying to hold on to. Or, oh, that's what really feels lacking in my life. Like, I've been blaming money for something that is actually my responsibility to first see and bring awareness to, and then take responsibility for redesigning my life. And so that's what I mean by we scapegoat money, is that we put a lot of emotions and a lot of energy towards something that's not really going to shift our experience of wealth.
Net worth is different than self-worth.
Yeah.
That investment securities, is that what you're basing your security on?
Yes.
When you think about trust, are you really letting yourself trust? There's a very fine distinction and some very powerful observations there that I think individuals can contemplate. And one thing that I got throughout your conversation was very much about relationship, about intimacy. And The metaphysical equivalent to money is actually relationship. It does seem to be a little paradoxical that here we have someone who is in the finance industry that is all about numbers, how to increase wealth in that money sense. And yet, is that really a conversation that most financial people even think about? Or that when you go to your CPA or financial planner, that's part of the discussion? Because it seems so divided. It seems like such a separate conversation.
Yes, but I tell you, we are at the precipice of change. I know that in my bones. I know that in conversations with my clients. I know it in my firm. I know it because there's books, not just like mine. There's another book that just came out called The 5 Types of Wealth. There's something that people are chewing on collectively that I can feel is wanting to shift to something different. And I think ultimately that is why I wrote my book, The Power of Enough, is to give people a new framework. And I can't tell you how many people have responded saying, oh my gosh, you gave me words for something that I felt, but I didn't have language for. When clients work with me, they know that I will sit down and do spreadsheets to organize the financial stability piece of the pie. And when I say piece of the pie, we're going to get to that conversation of what is true wealth holistically when we're looking at 12 different aspects, and financial stability is one. It's an important one. And I know, like any other area in our life, if the house is on fire, we have to address, right? If we're going through financial turmoil, we have to address financial stability. If I'm going through sickness, I have to address physical health. If I'm going through a loss of my spouse, I have to address the void in connection, right? Do you see how fires happen in all of our different aspects of wealth? And as a financial advisor, people come to me because they have questions or they have concerns or they have goals in the financial stability. And my job is to help organize them there. But my other job is to also make sure that we are addressing the other areas of wealth in their life and getting super clear around what are the strategies that we're using that take money and what are the strategies that we're using to build wealth that are non-financial. Because if I don't bring that to the conversation, Simran, then I'm only cultivating that dependency on money. And I think that's what you're asking. You're like, really, this is paradoxical. We're talking about wealth, but we're still codependent on money. How are we going to solve that?
It does feel resonant, and I think it's critical at this time because there are a lot of people that are facing their fears, whether it is
100%.
job loss or whether it is, where's the economy going or what's going to happen with all the changes that are taking place. It's very easy to just focus on that bottom line and on that spreadsheet and go into that place of, I've got to go out and accumulate more. I've got to work
Yeah.
harder. I've got to hoard and keep everything in my coffers really, really secure because I
Yeah.
don't know what the next thing is coming from. But if all of that is really happening to point us, and I say that because 1111 magazine and talk radio has always been devoted to the journey of the soul. The conversation you're having is a soul conversation. You
Yeah.
can either lean into what personhood and identity want, which is often where the ego will take us down the track of trying to convince us that
Yeah.
accumulation is the status of our value. But the
Yeah.
soul points in a different direction, the direction that you're pointing to, which
Mm-hmm.
says, I have to look at myself not just by my net worth, but the whole pie. To make that shift means that we have to delve into ourselves at a level of intimacy. So it's not just intimacy with money, it's a deeper intimacy with ourselves as well.
100%. 100%. And that's kind of the second part of the book. The first part of the book is like, let's clear up some of the interference. Because, Simran, if I tell someone, let's dive into wealth, but we didn't deal with the emotions around money, I lose people. They're holding on to emotions that they're feeling. So that's why the first part of the book is dive in to your relationship to money. Let's get clear what that main emotion is. For me, for the longest time, it was anger. For someone else, it can be avoidance. For someone else, it can be grasping and hoarding, right? Use the word you want and then just own it and don't have to change it. Just own it. And then we can do that deeper dive that you're speaking of. It's like, let's do the dive into our souls and see what is my soul's experience of wealth in this moment? And so let's go into that because we haven't really clarified then what is wealth. And I give people a very clear framework to dive into this different definition and experience of wealth. And I do it based on the science of human needs that we're all familiar with. We all know Maslow's needs. Now, a lot of people don't know he didn't write it as a hierarchy. Corporations in the 60s made it a hierarchy, like other things that have happened. He wrote about different needs more like in a journey and a process that you're speaking about here on the 1111 show. And then there was another economist I had the pleasure of working with, Manfred Max Neef. He's from Chile. And he took Maslow's work on human needs, put him into a matrix, and then talked about satisfiers because he taught me something really important.
To feel truly wealthy, we need to move past a definition of resources based on quantity and abundance, how much we have, and toward a definition of resources based on quality and meaning, how much we can develop and grow. The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money, is a new book by Elizabeth Husserl. Elizabeth will tell you that money acts like a mirror, reflecting your insecurities. If you feel anger or frustration toward money, it often signifies deeper emotional or psychological struggles. Money is a neutral tool, but it can overshadow our core values, leading to paralysis in various aspects of life. Ultimately, money serves as both a tool to create a joy-filled life and a reflection of our values and fears. You can find out more at elizabethhusserl.com. We'll be right back after these messages.
SIMRAN is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
Before we get back to Elizabeth Husserl and this beautiful book, The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money, I want to invite you to the 1111 Collective. You can go to 1111mag.com and register there to be informed about all the shows, the new 1111 magazine issues, and to keep in touch with everything that's happening for your own personal growth and evolution. You are not on a journey, you are the journey. The Power of Enough is about recognizing and appreciating that what we have in our lives is sufficient for our contentment, happiness, and satiation. It acts as a powerful antidote to the relentless pursuit of more, offering a path to fulfillment that relies not only on external accumulation, but on internal appreciation. Stories, exercises, a beautiful mandala map, and other resources. The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money. You can find out more at elizabethhusserl.com. We have to delve into ourselves at a level of intimacy. So it's not just intimacy with money, it's a deeper intimacy with ourselves as well.
We all know Maslow's needs. He wrote about different needs more like in a journey and a process that you're speaking about here on the 1111 show. And then there was another economist I had the pleasure of working with, Manfred Max Neef. He's from Chile. And he took Maslow's work on human needs, put him into a matrix, and then talked about satisfiers because he taught me something really important. Human needs are universal, right? We all have them. So this whole conversation, are we needy, are we not? It's almost like out the window. Human needs are universal, but the way we satisfy them is unique and personal. And that's the key distinction. Manfred Max Neef, as I mentioned, was from Chile, and he was trying to empower Latin American economies to have their own strategies outside of strategies that were coming from the US, right? He had his own kind of agenda there. But I think if I take it outside of the political sphere, what he's really saying is that we have agency to define how we experience wealth. I took all of this work and I created a wealth mandala. Mandala is a Sanskrit word for circle, and it's a path of transforming suffering into joy. The subtitle of the book is Finding Joy in Your Relationship to Money, and the subtitle is Finding Joy in Wealth. And so the way that you do it is that it's an exercise I have in the book. It's a free resource I have on my website. It's a 1-page, literally black and white mandala. You print it out, and there's 12 needs on this mandala, and there's space for 2 if I haven't set a need that's really important to you. So choose your own. And then you take this mandala and you take your favorite color. Mine is yellow. And you color in each part of the pie, right? I have financial stability, safety, physical health, touch, leisure, curiosity, connection, belonging, participation, understanding or wisdom, purpose, and freedom. And you take each slices of the pie, spokes on the wheel, petals on the flower, your metaphor of choice, and you color it in. So if you're feeling lack or scarcity or poverty in any one of these spokes, you color it in very little. If you're feeling very full and fulfilled and satiated and satisfied in any of these spokes, you color it all the way to the top. So you go one by one, right? You can do this by yourself. I recently did it with my family over Valentine's because this was my Valentine's ask. I don't want a gift. I want us to do the wealth mandala again. And then you color it up and then you take a step back. SIMRAN, and this is really important. Don't skip this step. Take a step back, tape it to the wall. And the first thing I want you to do is just take a deep breath and let whatever image you see be beautiful. If you look at a flower, its petals are never perfect. It's never 12 petal perky. You know what I mean? Some petals are a little more shriveled. Some petals are fully filled out, but it's a beautiful flower when you see it in its entirety. So take a step back and look at your wealth mandala and recognize some petals are going to be more filled out and more colored. Some won't, and that is okay. And then I tell people, go to the petals that you're feeling more filled in, more fulfilled, and see, what unique strategies and satisfiers am I currently using there that can tell me what are the ways that are working, right? What are the things that I'm doing that actually are making me feel fulfilled? What are the patterns? And just bring some awareness there because we do know how to fulfill ourselves when it comes to our spirit's need, our soul's need, our journey. We know some things that do work. And then take that awareness to 2 of the other petals that are potentially less full and be like, let me be with that experience of lack and scarcity in that particular petal. If it is in the financial stability petal, I often tell people, don't try to fix it right away. We all know that that can fail. Instead, get curious and let yourself write out a list of questions. What questions do I have? What do I not know how to resolve right now? Where am I feeling scared? What is changing in this particular slice of the pie that feels uncertain? Just let yourself take some time to be with that slice of the pie and be like, what's really at the core of what is making this feel insecure? And then I tell people choose 2 to focus on for the year and write a list of strategies that potentially can require money. So if you're feeling job security because grants got dried up or you got laid off or your department doesn't know what's going to happen, right? There's a lot of insecurity in the world right now. Start to write your list of like, okay, do I need to improve my resume? Do I need to start networking? Do I need to just have a meeting with my manager to get really clear on what's happening? Like, what is the list of needs to happen? What are those things that don't require you spending money? And then get clear on, are there some things that potentially do require you spending money? Do you need to hire someone to review your resume? Do you need to get on LinkedIn Premium so you can start to network? What needs to happen to address? Do we need to shift our recipes for them to have less eggs? Do you see how you can start to bring creativity to both of these columns? And you start to be like, okay, here are the areas that potentially, if I have discretionary funds, I can bring money towards. And here are the strategies that it doesn't matter if I have $0 to put towards them, I can still implement. And that is the key piece, again, where you start to loosen the dependency that we think we have on money. And you start to widen your perspective of both resources at your fingertips. And you start to widen your perspective of wealth because you can address these 2 areas, these 2 pieces of the pie in your wealth mandala, knowing the ones that feel more fulfilled And you can lean on those for moments of, I need a dose of feeling wealthy, to then tackle the areas that you're feeling more poor. That is how you can lean into a different experience of wealth.
I love this part of the book because it really does shape a more holistic lens for us to look through when we're looking at our life, when we're looking at our money, when we're looking at the satisfaction and fulfillment of
Yeah.
wealth consciousness. And I want to just let everyone know that this wealth mandala is literally a visual map, a chart that
Mm-hmm.
helps you to fulfill your needs and
Yeah.
situate them in the different cycles and centers that apply to your life. Go to the resource section. So that's elizabethhusserl.com. You can find that link in the bio description below, so be sure and click it. And while you're there, get a copy of the book and pick one up for a friend, because money is about your relationship. And the best way to do this kind of work is in relationship with someone else.
Yeah.
Pull out the conversation and the vulnerability that has to happen. I loved what you wrote about Max Neef within the book. You wrote that he argued that contemporary society was so focused on creating new goods and services that we lost sight of the most important end goal, learning
Mm-hmm.
how to be human. And this mandala is that map to remember how to be human, because we can get so caught up in the making of money that we
Yeah.
become machine rather than
Yeah.
human.
Yeah. There's a great quote by this Buddhist teacher, David Loy, and he says, we're not materialistic enough. And everyone kind of like shudders. And they're like, oh, don't say that. But what he's meaning is like, we're not materialistic enough that we get so obsessed with the symbol of the material world, aka money, that we don't step in and participate with the material world. We are spirit beings having a material or an experience on this material world, or this is where our soul came in to work with resources to create. Give money its due place. It is one of the resources we get to play with, but it's definitely not the only one. So give it its right relationship in your life, and then start to look at the wider map of wealth. See what other resources, relationships, experiences of intimacy, connection, vitality can you bring? And it starts to become fun because it's almost like a challenge. How do you add wealth to these areas in your life without the use of money? Take a money sabbatical from your need for connection or belonging or participation or physical health. It starts to become fun because you're like, who am I as I'm individuating as an adult to get to know myself as a person who can create wealth? And if we do that more and more as our individuals, and then in community, and then in society, we're on the precipice of change, because we can start to restructure our cultural experience of wealth and money and start to diffuse where there's a concentration of power. I know that's for me a big one. It's like, oh my gosh, how did power get concentrated in the hands of people who have money? It's because we are agreeing to that. And if we don't like it, we can start to agree to something different.
I really do believe that there is only good in the world, and that even the seemingly challenging things that take place, they are really happening for a greater good. I loved your story and share about being in Oaxaca and living there. And you wrote, little did the Oaxacans know that with each hug, smile, and gesture offered, I was recalibrating my experience of well-being, happiness, and wealth, leading me to touch a level of joy that filled my cup and gratitude to the brim. They had the ability not only to survive, but to thrive, rooted in their deep relationship to one another and the natural world. A different face of wealth stared me down, one based on the depth of relationships with others and with nature. It does feel like our society is constricting in
Yeah.
order to expand. And I'd love to also get into this wonderful idea that money has its own conversation to have with us.
It still brings tears to my eyes when you read that back. I mean, that was over 20 years ago, but I can see myself in that field, Simran. I think the most important piece of those 2 years, I feel so privileged of having been able to experience that, because somatically it forever shifted me. I didn't know it at the time, but what those 2 years in Oaxaca gave me was the opportunity to start to experience wealth in my body, which is very different than experiencing wealth accumulating on a spreadsheet. That can feel very abstract. And what I mean by experiencing wealth in my body is that I was able to tap into those moments where I felt satiation as a visceral experience. And that is really key, because that's what I mean when I say you can learn how to embody wealth. The simplest way to think about that is take a moment right now and think back at what's the last moment where you felt fulfilled. It could have been a meaningful conversation you had with someone. It could have been a nourishing meal that just filled you to the core. It could have been just having a drink of water when you were thirsty. It could have been the joy after dancing or taking a walk or seeing a sunset. It could have been the satisfaction after doing like a really good workout or finishing a project, right? Or the satisfaction. So this is really important because people ask me all the time, what's the difference between gratitude and satiation? Gratitude is a heart-centered experience. It's like we feel the warmth in our heart and we love. Satiation is a body experience where you feel satisfied. And the easiest way to know that is remember back to a moment that you ate a great meal that nourished you versus a meal that was empty calories, or you ate it so fast because maybe you were working through your lunch and you're like, wait, did I even eat? Right? Like we didn't register. And so being able to register those moments of satisfaction is what allows you to compound moments of meaning, much like we compound interest in our portfolios. You start to compound moments of meaning and satiation and satisfaction. And you start to be like, oh, my body knows how to feel wealthy. And that was what the gift of Oaxaca was like being around people who felt wealthy in their bodies, even though we were figuring out financial stability issues. I was in those villages teaching women how to start savings and loan cooperatives. There was a very specific need, which was how do we create situations that allow us not to depend on a loan shark, right? Someone in the community who's lending money at 40% interest. And so we started organizing, and they would save into a pot. They would lend it to each other at 3%, right? So there was still a responsibility to pay it back, but it wasn't these absurd situations where they could never get out of. So there was a specific thing that I was there to do, but their wealth was so much broader in how they experienced life that being around their bodies and their belly laughs and their ritual and their community gatherings and walking with them in nature and seeing just a relationship to nature started to shift something in my body that I had never experienced. And then that's what I took home. And for the last 20 years, I've been just really diving into what does that all mean? And how do I put that into context for someone who did not live in Oaxaca?
That whole section about the mind, the body, and the heart, and creating that sense of embodiment and satiation within is quite powerful. I think we are at a place where, whether it's due to trauma or fear, experiences, where we are in our lives, we have to approach the somatics of the body, of the heart, and even of the mind.
100%. And I think what's really important in that distinction is the scarcity brain does exist. And let's not fight it because it has a role. We are wired to seek, because that is how we have survived for generations and centuries, right? We are wired to seek calories. We are wired to seek shelter. We are wired to seek safety from predators. That is so deeply wired in our brains. But what our body can do is help our minds realize that we're not always in those places of threat, right? The fight or flight that you were talking about, SIMRAN, at the beginning. So the more we let our body have a role in our wealth strategy, in our wealth creation, it can start to communicate really important messages to her mind that can get in a scarcity loop. And that's kind of like the leverage that is the resource that we haven't been leveraging as a society. What's the wisdom in our body to teach us what wealth is? And it is through that satiation, the fulfillment, those compounding moments of meaning that come when we feel satisfied, because then there's a much more dynamic, richer, wider conversation with the different parts of ourselves.
I loved the statement that your mother incorporated into you, the I feel satisfied, because that really is a soul statement. That's something that's deep, that registers in the cells as opposed to having or being full or all of the other words that we could use there. And that's another really powerful chapter that you have where you redefine success as satiation and you help people understand what is enough. Many of us, enough is not enough. We just keep going and going and going rather than understanding that we have to come to that place of enough inside for us to realize that we don't really need too much outside. There's nothing wrong with that, though. I want to make sure that part of your conversation is that there's nothing wrong with having money. There's nothing wrong with having nice things, going places you want to go, but that there has to be a balance in regard to the inner and the outer.
First, my mom is proud as a peacock that she's in chapter 8. She's so proud. My family is from Colombia, and so my mom didn't grow up with a lot of resources. She was the oldest of 6, and they had one car. They would pile in. This was back in the day before seatbelts, right? They would pile in all the kids, and off they go. They share. Like my grandma made all their clothes and their wedding dresses, and so my mom kind of knew how to find satisfaction without a lot of money, right? And so that's one of the wealth lineages I received was that resourcefulness. And so she's so proud to be in the book. But I agree with you. This is really important. My 2 values, SIMRAN, are depth and wealth. And both of those can exist, especially when we define wealth more holistically. And then in that sliver of wealth, you want your financial stability slice of the pie to feel full. Money has a very important role there. And money has a way that it can also bring strategies to the other areas of your life. If someone has a curiosity for other cultures, money can help you get on an airplane and go visit another culture. And here's the key piece. Money would love to participate, right? Every time I see a client sit down and have a conversation with money, and we get through some of the first emotions. The first emotions are always the most telling one. It kind of tells me, does this person approach the world in their relationship through anger, through fear, through entitlement? Like, it's always interesting to see what that first conversation with. Oftentimes, SIMRAN, how they approach the relationship to money is often how they approach the relationship to a lot of things in their lives. People, spouses, kids. There's patterns in our relational styles. But once you get clear on that, then you and money can sit down and actually start to create a plan together. Money literally at times feels like it sits on my shoulders. It's like, I want to play. I want to be involved in people's lives. I want to participate.
I want to back up and I want you to frame having that conversation with money.
So a conversation with money is an empty chair exercise or a Gestalt chair exercise. So people use it in therapy for many different ways. And what they do, it's a practice where you can have a conversation with someone or something that is not in the room with you. So let's just say you have unresolved issues with a parent. You can have an empty chair exercise. You put a picture of your parent in front of you and just say what you need to say to get it off your chest. So it's the same thing with money. So what I tell people, right, is that you first have to choose a money object. It can be a credit card, a checkbook. No one has checkbook these days, but it could be cash, an app on your phone. I've had a client grab a little piece of a gold nugget that his mom brought him back from a mine. Like whatever represents money to you, put it in a chair in front of you. And you get to decide the distance. It's funny, SIMRAN, someone will put the chairs really close because they're like, I want you to be close, money. Some people will push the chairs a little further apart because they need a little distance from money. Then you set a timer on your phone. And for the first 3 minutes, you get to just say whatever's on your chest. And the invitation is don't tell money your story. Money knows your story. Tell it what you're feeling. Like, oh, God damn it, money. I'm feeling angry at you right now. Or like, where have you been? Or like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid I'm going to lose you. Like, what's the emotion you feel? And try to speak as much as you can to that emotion for 3 to 5 minutes straight. Then when your timer goes off, and trust the timer, finish what you were saying, switch chairs. Now you're holding your money object in your lap and you are responding as money. Don't edit yourself. Everyone feels resistance. So don't edit, just try it and see what comes out of your mouth. And money gets 5 minutes the same way that you did, and just let money respond. If that's a stretch for people, I say, you know what, have a conversation between 2 parts of you. The part of you that pays your bills or pays your taxes, right? They're the ones who are feeling money stress. But when you let that part of you that deals with money respond, or when you let money respond, it's amazing the layers of the conversation and how you can quickly get to the core of what's happening if you don't edit yourself.
How does that
Yeah.
shift a person's life once they've had that conversation?
Well, I'll just speak from my personal experience. I was so angry at money. And I speak about it in the book because I was trying to start my private practice. I'd finished grad school. I was taught all these like esoteric techniques, but no one taught me how to start a private practice. And I was so angry at money because it wasn't showing up enough in my life. I was stressing about paying my monthly bills. I was living hand, month to month. And I sat down and I had this conversation with money. I was really lucky that I went to a workshop where this was facilitated, and I was so angry at it and I just ranted. And then when it was money's turn, money was like, "Whoa, Elizabeth, you are strangling me. You are just like holding on so tight. Any air or any life is just being kind of sucked out of me, and I can't help because it's too tight. Give me some space." And also get super clear on all these questions you have about becoming an entrepreneur. I can't teach you how to be an entrepreneur, but I can show up and participate with you. What was really important is that in that conversation with money, I got super clear of how my tightness wasn't helping. I've had teachers tell me when you start to close down, nothing happens. I was feeling really closed down to creativity. So I was struggling even imagining how to start a private practice. And I also had never been taught how to start a private practice or how to be an entrepreneur. Both my parents had been W-2, which is just a different way of earning money. You get a paycheck every 2 weeks or twice a month. And starting a business is very cyclical. It's a very different thing. And so I was like, oh, that is my next growth edge. That's what I need to learn. That's what I need to read books on. That's what I need to get clarity on. And when I started to get that awareness, Simran, something in my body viscerally relaxed. And I'm like, okay, money, you're not trying to make this any harder. You're telling me what I need to take responsibility for. And you're actually telling me, hey, the more we get clear on this, the more you're willing to show up and participate. And later, subsequent conversations with money, Simran, made me realize that the other place that I was struggling was charging my full fees, right? I wanted to give my work away. One of the things I'd learned from my mom is that she would chronically undercharge because she didn't have to make money from her practice as a therapist because my father made enough money to pay for the bills. So she actually got to work with a different population. For the longest time, I thought she was chronically undercharging. Then I came to realize that was a conscious choice because it allowed her to serve the population that she was most dedicated to. And in the spectrum of my family system, that was enough. That was an empowered choice. At that point, I was really angry because I'm like, oh my gosh, I come from a lineage where in a private practice, you can't overcharge. And I was stopping myself short because that's what I had seen. And as I continue to have my conversations with money's like, no, that worked for her, given her family system. That doesn't work for you because guess what? You are in charge of paying your rent and paying your bills. We have to do something different. But it took the blame off my mom. It took the blame off of money. It took the blame off of anyone. And it gave me the responsibility to dive deeper.
You actually support and facilitate individuals in learning that money story because that's a critical
Yeah.
piece as well. We pick up those
Yeah.
stories from our families, our societies, our culture, even generationally. We don't realize we carry things that then determine our own actions and relationship with money, which
Yeah.
will then create that friction within the relationship. As you were talking about your conversation with money and how that unfolded and the beautiful way that you were able to hear and then shift into your part of the responsibility, what I kept seeing and feeling was spiritual relationship. And that this is really a conversation about love and partnership and understanding that I'm here with you. Just like a marriage, we have to grow together. We have to communicate. We have to move forward with the same unified vision that we're going to work with one another and we're each going to be whole and take care of our parts. Money really is this partnership that we have available to us as long as we don't fight and divorce our partner.
No one should be in between your relationship to money. Right? Much like no one should be in between your relationship to your partner. You need a direct relationship to the people that you are building intimacy, love, and connection in your life. Your spouse, your partner, your family members, your close friends, your colleagues. Doesn't mean that there aren't moments in time when experts step in and help, right? We see therapists, we see coaches, we see counselors, we go to doctors. It's really important to have a network of people who support you. But hopefully your therapist isn't living in your bedroom with you and your spouse. That would create a dependency on that person. And so the same thing here. I will always have a job because people do need sounding boards to talk about their relationship to money and to plan out financial strategies. But I tell every single one of my clients, I should not stand between you and your relationship to money. That is yours to cultivate. And it can be done with love, connection, ease, playfulness, and ultimately joy.
Well, one thing is for certain, you can tell through your book and you can tell through this conversation that you are grounded in abundance, that you are generously overflowing with wealth and the spirit of generosity. And that is the example of the power of enough. The path to enoughness includes money as an important mirror and an invaluable guide. At the heart of this journey is the recognition that true wealth is cultivated from within. By tapping into the power of enough and learning to embody the experiences of abundance, vitality, intimacy, growth, and satiation, you create an unshakable foundation of enoughness that will support you in navigating life's challenges and opportunities with grace and resilience. This is from Elizabeth's book, The Power of Enough.
This is not a book to buy and just put on your nightstand. This is a book to buy and take the journey from start to finish, because it is a journey into your relationship to money and relationship to wealth. And it's a book to share with the people that are important to you, because I'm a parent. I wrote this book because I was committed to not passing on scarcity to my daughter. And that is my responsibility as a parent, is to not pass on things that no longer serve my lineage. And so the more we do this work with ourselves, with our partners, with our kids, with our families, the more we have an impact, a ripple effect on this world. There's a discussion guide on my website to provoke questions amongst each other. There are many moments throughout the whole book that just ask questions around wealth and money that have nothing to do with numbers. I did that intentionally. I wrote this book without any investment strategy or numerical use, because I wanted to prove the point that we can talk about money and we can talk about wealth in a way that does not require numbers. And that is how we start to break the social taboo. And the more we talk about money, the more we embrace money, the more we're in relationship with money, the more we feel financial agency to design our own life and to also redesign the ways we interact as a society and as a culture. And I'm so excited to be part of that transformation.
The Power of Enough is an invitation to explore a new possibility in your relationship with money and wealth, where money becomes a trusted mentor that pushes you to expand your horizon, and wealth becomes something to embody instead of possess. This requires a radical transformation of how we see wealth, how we define money, and the ways we take responsibility for where we've gone wrong. In Part 1, you embark on a journey to fundamentally redefine your understanding of wealth and money. In Part 2, you delve deeper into the transformative journey of embodying wealth and cultivating a profound sense of satiation in your life. Part 3 invites you to explore what it truly means to embody wealth by inviting money and the wisdom it brings deeper into your life. I invite you to explore more about Elizabeth Husserl and her new book, The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money. Pick up a copy for yourself and a friend and go through the exercises together, maybe even your book club, and allow this conversation around money to expand and to grow not only your consciousness, but that of our world. Be sure to download your Wealth Mandala map from her resources section on her website. You can find out more at elizabethhusserl.com. Elizabeth Husserl is a registered investment advisor, representative, financial advisor, and co-founder of Peak360 Wealth Management, a boutique wealth planning firm. She holds a BS in economics from Tulane University and an MA in East-West psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies, where she is also taught as an adjunct professor. I want to invite you to the 1111 Collective. You can go to 1111mag.com and register there to be informed about all the shows, the new 1111 magazine issues, and to keep in touch with everything that's happening for your own personal growth and evolution. 1111 is devoted to the journey of your soul. And visit 1111mag.com and join the 1111 Collective. Great. I look forward to being in relationship with you there. This book. Thank you for being on the show.
This is
Until next week,
and just
in love, of love, with love, and as love. I am SIMRAN. Be well.
finish, because it is a journey into your relationship to money and your relationship to wealth. And it's a book to share with the people that are important to you, because I'm a parent. I wrote this book because I was committed to not passing on scarcity to my daughter. And that is my responsibility as a parent, is to not pass on things that no longer serve my lineage. And so the more we do this work with ourselves, with our partners, with our kids, with our families, the more we have an impact, a ripple effect on this world. There's a discussion guide on my website to provoke questions amongst each other. There are many moments throughout the whole book that just ask questions around wealth and money that have nothing to do with numbers. I did that intentionally. I wrote this book without any investment strategy or numerical use, because I wanted to prove the point that we can talk about money and we can talk about wealth in a way that does not require numbers. And that is how we start to break the social taboo. And the more we talk about money, the more we embrace money, the more we're in relationship with money, the more we feel financial agency to design our own life and to also redesign the ways we interact as a society and as a culture. And I'm so excited to be part of that transformation.
The Power of Enough is an invitation to explore a new possibility in your relationship with money and wealth, where money becomes a trusted mentor that pushes you to expand your horizon, and wealth becomes something to embody instead of possess. This requires a radical transformation of how we see wealth, how we define money, and the ways we take responsibility for where we've gone wrong. In Part 1, you embark on a journey to fundamentally redefine your understanding of wealth and money. In Part 2, you delve deeper into the transformative journey of embodying wealth and cultivating a profound sense of satiation in your life. Part 3 invites you to explore what it truly means to embody wealth by inviting money and the wisdom it brings deeper into your life. I invite you to explore more about Elizabeth Husserl and her new book, The Power of Enough, Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money. Pick up a copy for yourself and a friend and go through the exercises together, maybe even your book club, and allow this conversation around money to expand and to grow not only your consciousness, but that of our world. Be sure to download your Wealth Mandala map from her resources section on her website. You can find out more at elizabethhusserl.com. Elizabeth Husserl is a registered investment advisor, representative, financial advisor, and co-founder of Peak360 Wealth Management, a boutique wealth planning firm. She holds a BS in economics from Tulane University and an MA in East-West psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies, where she is also taught as an adjunct professor. I want to invite you to the 1111 Collective. You can go to 1111mag.com and register there to be informed about all the shows, the new 1111 magazine issues, and to keep in touch with everything that's happening for your own personal growth and evolution. 1111 is devoted to the journey of your soul. Visit 1111mag.com and join the 1111 Collective. I look forward to being in relationship with you there. Thank you for being on the show. Until next week, in love, of love, with love, and as love, I am SIMRAN. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host SIMRAN next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living. You are not on the journey. You are the journey.